Small business bloggers face a problem. A good writer should read. A good marketer should curate content. But how do we find content to read and curate? That's what we'll talk about in this week's episode of the Blogcentric podcast. Welcome to Spiderworking's Blogcentric podcast, a podcast about blogging. Hello and welcome to episode 62 of the Blogcentric podcast. I'm Amanda Webb and you'll find the show notes for today at spiderworking.com/62. A few things happened over the Christmas break. If I didn't know better, I would have said it was a cosmic sign. I finally got to read Stephen King's book on writing, and in it he talks at length about the importance of reading if you're going to write. Then I got an email from Chris Brogan titled Fill the Jukebox. In it he suggests, amongst other things, number 1, unsubscribe in all forms from anything that's not moving your goals forward. News is stupid. Keeping up is stupid. Pushing yourself forward is the real work. Growth. And number 2, subscribe to newsletters and blogs and sites that grow your mind if they are pushing you towards your goals. If you're not subscribed to Chris' emails, why aren't you? I'll leave a link in the show notes. The third thing that happened wasn't really happening at all. I finally got so annoyed with the disruptive ads on a particular site that I subscribed to that I unsubscribed. It felt great. So whilst I was there, I decided to have a big old clear out of the sites I subscribed to that no longer or rarely publish anything worth reading. It felt great. Stephen King is right. You have to read to become a better writer, and I read a lot. I read books every morning. I read from the blogs and news sites that I subscribe to. Reading helps me write. But I also know that Chris Brogan's right. The low quality content from some of the blogs I subscribed to was getting in the way. After my clear out, I opened up my Feedly, more on that later, and instead of hundreds of new news stories, there were less than 50. It was much easier for me to find out the stuff that I wanted to read. But there was a hole. Now I'd cleaned out the rubbish, I needed to fill that space with more, but this time, not rubbish, better quality content. So I went looking. And that's the topic of this podcast. How can you find interesting, inspiring, valuable content? Not just articles, but videos, podcasts. And what should you do with that content when you do find it? You're listening to Blogcentric from Spiderworking. When I started putting together this episode, I realised that it could quite easily end up being a long list of tools. But who wants to listen to me just saying a bunch of names of tools? I am going to refer to a few, but for the full list, you'll need to go to the show notes. And in case you've forgotten where they are, you'll find those at spiderworking.com/62. But before you find those tools, before you start looking for content, you need to ask yourself a couple of questions. What do you want to read, watch, listen to? Do you, number 1, want to find stuff that will enhance your life? Number 2, are you a news junkie? And despite what Chris Brogan says, news can be important. So are you a news junkie who needs to stay up to date? Number 3, are you looking for motivating, inspiring, really useful content? Now, you might want to read all 3 types of content, or you might just be looking for one type. Maybe the content you're looking to read doesn't fit any of my categories at all, and that's fine. Just as long as you can define what you're looking for before you start looking. And the next question I want you to ask is, what are you going to do with the content you find? Are you just looking for stuff to read and inspire you? Are you looking for stuff you can learn from, so tutorial type stuff? Are you looking for content that challenges your ideas and opinions to help you break out of that content bubble? Are you looking for content you can share on social media sites? Armed with the answers to those questions, we can go on the hunt and know exactly what content we'll choose to follow and what we won't. Google Alerts has been my starting point for finding new blogs and content creators, probably since I started using the internet. I can't remember life before Google Alerts. And if you aren't familiar with Google Alerts, you'll find them at google.com/alerts. From there, you can enter a keyword or a phrase that you're interested in, and it will send you a daily email with a list of articles and web pages that it's found that include that search term. Now, this is handy, but you'll find that your email inbox fills up pretty quickly, and you'll soon stop looking at those emails. If you really want to get value from Google Alerts, you should pair it with an RSS reader. Like Feedly, the one I mentioned earlier. Feedly, that's Feedly, lets you subscribe to the results that Google Alerts finds. So now, instead of having to wade through all those emails, you can visit the Feedly site and access the results via their website or their app. I'm going to share a video in the show notes. It's a little bit out of date, but you'll get the gist of it. It takes you through the process of sharing Google Alerts to Feedly. And Google Alerts will find a lot of results. It's your job to find the gems there. And once you've found a gem, a blog or a website that produces consistently good content, you can actually subscribe to that blog in Feedly, separately from the alerts. And I mean separately. I recommend keeping your Google Alerts in a completely separate folder on Feedly to the blogs that you want to read on a regular basis, because that way you're going to filter your results just to the blogs you want to read. And that's the problem with Google Alerts. The sheer volume of results that it finds. What you need, if you want to retain your sanity, is a tool that can help you find the really good content. A tool with an algorithm that understands what you want. Like I said, there's no end of tools that can offer something like this. I'm just going to share a few. You're listening to Blogcentric from Spiderworking. I mentioned algorithm, so let's start with the obvious one. Facebook. Our Facebook feeds are designed to show us the content that is the most interesting to us. We can subscribe to as many business pages, blog pages, news pages as we like. Facebook will only show us what it considers the best. Of course, when we're looking at Facebook, we're often doing it in a sneaky moment, whilst we're waiting in a queue or while we're procrastinating. We might see these great stories in our feeds, but we're already feeling guilty about spending time on Facebook when we're supposed to be doing something else. So we scroll by. But don't! Before you scroll by and decide not to click, use Facebook Save and save the story to read it later. When you sit down to read, all that content will be under the Save tab. If you find a good site producing consistently valuable content, add it to your Feedly account so that you don't have to rely on Facebook showing you their stuff again. Twitter doesn't have an inbuilt save function, but there's a really handy tool Pocket. Getpocket.com. And you can integrate this with your browser and phone, and it lets you bookmark stuff from Twitter or anywhere actually on the web to read later. The browser extension adds a Pocket icon underneath your tweets, which you just click and it will save a link that's within that tweet to your Pocket application or to the website for you to read later. I love this tool. Whenever I have a spare moment, I can dip into the content I've saved, either via the website or via their app, and I'll know there's something there worth reading. Pocket isn't just for bookmarking though. It's recently added an Explore or a Discover tab that lets you find articles that are of interest to you. So I thought I'd give it a whirl. When I told it I was interested in blogging, it found me a whole bundle of articles. Some were quite old, but many were well worth a read. I think I might have found some new blogs to add to my feedly already. Next up is LinkedIn, and this is a surprising source for interesting reads. Because users can now effectively blog on LinkedIn using their publishing tools, you're going to find stuff there that won't appear elsewhere. You're going to find stuff from people who don't normally blog. If you want to search for posts on LinkedIn, you can, if you're on the web, you just click the list icon, which is just to the left of the search bar. And from there, select posts and then type in your search topic. You'll get a whole list of posts relating to that topic. LinkedIn automatically orders them by relevance, but you can change this to the most recent posts. I did this. I found some great stuff there. And actually it's kind of cool because now I can connect to the people who wrote those interesting posts as well, because I know we've got a shared interest. If you haven't discovered Medium yet, go give it a squiz now. Medium crosses a blogging platform with a social network, and it's full of really great content. You can follow people just like you can on social networks. You can comment and like their posts. You can bookmark them to read for later. You can share them on Twitter and Facebook. You can type in a topic and you'll find blog posts related to that topic. I put in blogging. I found a lot of people saying blogging was dead and a lot of people saying blogging wasn't dead, but there were some gems in there too. In the sidebar, when you're looking on the web, you'll find a reading roulette. This is kind of cool because it flags up posts on a roulette basis. You're just discovering them at random. So some really interesting reading there. On to Nuzzle. I had to include this one because I've heard so many people talking about it. Nuzzle, Nuzzle, is a content discovery tool that hooks into your Twitter and Facebook accounts, and it'll identify articles that are getting shared by your friends there. The idea is that these stories are going to be more relevant to you because your friends are recommending them. It orders results by the numbers of friends sharing those stories. I was surprised to discover the popular stories that I was missing by just scrolling through my Twitter feed. Nuzzle was highlighting them. And even better, you can broaden your results and select stories not just from friends, but from friends of friends, which brought up loads of more interesting results. Or if you feel like you're getting too much, you can narrow it down to just stories shared by people you have on a Twitter list. You're listening to Blogcentric from Spiderworking. That's just a small selection of the content discovery tools available. As I said, I'll link to more in the show notes. But the sheer volume of tools presents us with another problem. How do you find time to log into all those websites? The first thing to note is that we're using these tools to help us identify the blogs we want to subscribe to on a more regular basis. Once we've found the good ones, we can add them to our feedly so that can become our one-stop shop for content. The next thing to consider is how often you're going to look at these tools. It doesn't have to be daily. You'd spend your whole day looking if it was. Perhaps you're going to look at one a day, or maybe you're going to allocate a time once a week or even once a month that you're going to go searching for new content. When I cleared out my Feedly account after getting Chris's email, I found blogs I'd been subscribed to for years that had been uninteresting to me for years, whose content I'd scrolled past and tutted at. I should have been clearing that feed out more regularly. I won't let it happen again. Avoid making my mistake and have a monthly clear out. We wouldn't let a pile of old newspapers fill our house. We wouldn't keep all the junk mail that comes through our letterboxes. So why do we allow our digital feeds to fill up? If you can find time once a month for a clear out, you'll also find the time to add new and interesting content and blogs to your Feedly. If you followed my process so far, you'll have a daily newspaper on Feedly full of interesting, inspiring, challenging and helpful content. I read mine every morning over breakfast, like it's a real newspaper. What should you do next? Well, obviously, you need to read it. Well, some of it, the stuff that appeals to you in the moment. Allow yourself to be inspired by it. If Stephen King's right, you're going to become a better writer. If you're generous, you might want to share the good stuff too. Show your followers on Twitter, on Facebook, on social media that you find and read good, valuable content that they might like. And they'll keep coming back for more. And finally, if you're short on blog content, why not start a weekly roundup post sharing your top reads of the week? You're listening to Blogcentric from Spiderworking. I hope I've inspired you this week the same way Stephen King and Chris Brogan inspired me. In fact, I'm hoping you'll add me, this podcast, my blog, to your Feedly so that you never miss an episode or an article. Your challenge this week. As I was preparing to record this, I saw a tweet from Rebecca Radis. It linked to the results of a survey they'd done on Post Planner that discovered that 29% of respondents said that finding and sharing quality content was a challenge. Use the tools I've outlined in this podcast, in the show notes, and of course, Post Planner, who wrote that report, to help you overcome that challenge. That's all from me for this week. Before you go, you know what I'm going to say. I'd really love it if you popped over to iTunes and left me a review. It's really important because when people land on the podcast and they see that I've got good reviews, they're more likely to subscribe, to join in. The more people who subscribe and join in, the more downloads I get each week, the more it makes me want to keep podcasting. And you know what? If you believe in karma, something good might happen in return. Until next week, happy blogging. Blogcentric from Spiderworking is sponsored by We Teach Social, social media e-learning courses for small business. Find out more at weteachsocial.com.